The images on your website convey important information, and making your images ADA compliant ensures that all users, including those with visual disabilities, can understand your content. Now, just like all the other ADA requirement testing, the ADA audit software isn't foolproof when it comes to images. It can catch some issues, but it can't interpret meaning, context, or whether your alt text accurately describes the images on your page. And that's why we need to understand the rules, so that way we can write meaningful alt text, captions, and extended descriptions where they're needed to make your site more user-friendly and inclusive. In this lesson, we're going to go over the WCAG A and AA requirements for images, and we will also cover alt text writing basics, adding alt text in WordPress, adding extended descriptions for complex visuals, and testing your work. So let's start at the top with the WCAG requirements. An ADA-compliant website provides alt text for all meaningful images, and it marks decorative images as decorative. And this is for every ADA compliant website. It doesn't matter the level of compliance, that is basic compliance. You avoid images of text whenever possible, and there are so many reasons for this. I understand that it's tempting to build beautiful images in your favorite image editor and embed them in your website instead of formatting them in HTML. But not only are they not ADA compliant, they're also not scalable. And when you find them on a phone, they're tiny and you can't read them. So they just kind of stink. If you need help figuring out how to format something, just ask us and we'll help you, okay? Avoid images of text whenever possible. An ADA compliant website ensures that text in images, when you have to have them, and visual elements have sufficient contrast, and all of that is outlined in our color contrast lesson. Complex visuals like charts, graphs, and infographic, they have to be explained in detail using extended text descriptions. Now, visual elements that perform actions like buttons and links have to describe the action. And last but not least, images and visual content needs to reflow properly on smaller screens. So we talked a lot about alt text in these requirements. So I think we should take a step forward and just define what alt text is. Alt text, or the alt attribute of an image, is just a short description of what's going on in the image. It's put into the HTML code, and it shows the purpose that the image serves. And screen readers actually read this text aloud to users who can't see the image, and it's displayed if the image fails to load. It's also the only thing that Google knows about your images at this point. It may evolve with AI, but at this point, Google just sees your alt text. Now, here's the deal, though. Not every image needs alt text. Only images that add content and meaning need that alt text, and other images that are included in the design, such as like your background images, decorative icons, borders, or swirls around your page, they're just decorative. They're not adding meaning, they're just adding flair. And so you would leave their alt tags empty so that way screen readers just skip that information. Since so much of your ADA compliance regarding images revolves around your alt text, I'd like to go over a few alt text guidelines for you. Now note, there are lots and lots of alt text guidelines, and so I am by no means going over all of them. I'm going to go over a few highlights that I feel will help you understand and better write alt tags in your website. All Make Create sites are programmed to pull the title of the image as the initial alt text for the image. So if your image titles meet the alt text guidelines, then you won't have to adjust your alt text. That's just something to think about. Now, as you're writing your alt text, you want to be descriptive but concise. We're trying for about 125 characters. Because screen readers often pause after 125 characters, so we want to be brief and focused and describe what's actually shown in the image and focus on the meaningful parts. So in this example image, we have a golden retriever in flight fetching a ball. I could choose to describe the background if it would actually complement the content that I'm talking about on the page, but if not, if I have a page that's talking about golden retrievers and how agile they are and how they love to fetch, then that would be a great description for it. Does that make sense? So we want to include the information that's relevant to the viewer that will emphasize the content on the page, but we don't need to over-describe. We can skip image of or picture of in our descriptions because screen readers already announce that it's an image and it would just be repeating. So if you are, however, using screenshots as images in a training, then you should probably include screenshot of before the description because it would give value to the image for the listener. If you have to put words in an image, then you need to make sure that the alt text contains the meaningful text that's on your image. And if you are adding alt text to your images with SEO in mind, then make sure you're writing for accessibility first. If the keywords belong, add them. You want them to feel natural, like a conversation. Don't just shove them in there because that doesn't help anyone, not for accessibility and not for your SEO either, because Google prefers normal language. Okay, so now how do you add and modify your alt text in WordPress? Well, the first thing that you can do is you can name your images using the alt text guidelines. I often do this by just opening up my file explorer, right-clicking on an image, and then renaming it. Or if I'm building it in Canva, then I literally name the individual pages in my Canva document what I want the image to be named. So that way I don't have to go through and do it later. Because in your May Create site, we will pull the name of the image as the alt text. So if you name your images using the alt text guidelines, they don't have to be modified once you upload them. You can also add alt text when you upload your media. Now, this is super easy. Once your image is uploaded, you'll notice that it allows you to add alt text right here in the alt text box below the thumbnail of the image. So you would add your alt text here if you want it to be retained with the image throughout the site whenever you reuse it in the future. You also have the ability to add alt text after your media is placed on the page. So you can select the image that you want to add the alt text to and just add it in the alt text field in the block settings panel. Now, the tricky thing about this is this alt text only applies to this image when it is in this page. If I clicked on edit image, you'll notice that this image just has the alt text of image saved with it in the media library. So if I were to place it again on another page, I would have to put the alt text in again. So this is great if you need to have a different alt text for an image on a page. Maybe it has different meaning on a separate page. Now, charts, graphs, and infographics are considered complex visuals, so they are treated a little differently. They need to have extended text descriptions or usually have a table or a narrative summary to complement the information. And that does not mean that you're going to create a super long alt text for them. You're going to add additional information so people can utilize the information in the chart without being able to see it. So implementation options include just adding text below the chart, an explanation of what the image is. Using an accordion, that's what I've used in this example. You can toggle the accordion and it describes what's going on in the chart. The trick here is making sure that your accordion is accessible keyboard navigation and using the cadence blocks inside of WordPress that we provide for you. It is keyboard accessible and so it is ADA compliant. You could also link to a separate explanation. You might have a blog post or a view full data link that you can pull people to another page with. You can use a table block and you can add the raw data from the chart into a table where people can view it. Now, the tricky thing with tables and websites is that not all tables are actually responsive. And so if you choose to put the information in a table, you'll definitely need to check it on mobile to make sure that you can view it and use it on mobile, because sometimes it just becomes messy yuck. Okay, so use that sparingly. Now, if you're having a hard time creating the descriptions for your charts, you can use ChatGPT to create the descriptions for you. You can just upload your image to ChatGPT and ask it for an extended text description or narrative summary of your image for ADA. And it can also write your alt text for your image for you as well, if you're not sure how to do that for your chart. So in summary, charts, graphs, and infographics, they still have to have an alt tag, but they also need a second component that explains in more detail what's going on in your graphic. Now, I know as well as anyone how tedious these alt tags can be because I build a lot of pages and websites. So, when you're remediating these alt tags, it can be really painful. And oftentimes you're building pages and you're just rolling along and you forget. You forget to put a descriptive alt text in on your images. So run a check to make sure that you have alt text on your images. The tools that I use most often are Wave and Image Alt. They're both Chrome extensions, so they load super fast and they're very easy to use. First, let's take a look at Wave. Now, I click the wave icon and it pops right up. Note that your alt tags are not registered as errors. They're going to be down underneath features. I scroll down underneath features and it tells me I have 4 images with alternative text and 2 with empty alternative text. So I can click and it will take me to the images and it shows me the alternative text right underneath the image. And then from there, I can decide whether it's good or it needs to be rewritten, or if maybe it's just decorative. Now, Wave is pretty overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff going on in this screen, right? And so if I am only focused on remediating alt text or checking alt text, I use another Chrome extension. It's called Image Alt. Now, you toggle it on after it's installed, and you can ask it to show you the image's accessible name, show decorative images, and let you know if an image is missing the alt attribute. And from there, you can see that it's very clean and it just explains to you exactly what the alt text is on every single image. And as you look over them, you can use this as a checklist and you can remove the message from view. Like, I finished this one. So I would open this up on one monitor if you have a 2-monitor setup, and in the other monitor have the back end of WordPress open, and you can just go back and forth and use this as a checklist to make sure that you get all of the images on your page and that they're ready to go and fully accessible. So while remediating alt text and double checking it may feel tedious, the good news is that having ADA compliant images is actually far less techie feeling than some of the other things that we've talked about in our training. And it's much more black and white. Either the image has an alt tag or it doesn't. Either it's decorative or it's not. And it's up to you to understand the alt text guidelines to make sure that you are providing accurate information for people with disabilities so they can understand your content as well as those who can see the images. Just imagine describing the image to someone with their eyes closed. What would you say? And there you go. That's your alt tag.